If you grew up feeling mostly fine, not abused, not abandoned, not obviously hurt, but still carry a quiet heaviness you can't explain, this video is for you. If you learned how to function early, how to stay calm, how to not need much, how to be easy, and now, as an adult, life looks normal on the outside, but something inside you always feels tired, distant, or empty, this is for you. A lot of people live like this. They don't think anything bad happened to them. They don't feel allowed to complain, so they stay quiet and keep going. If that sounds familiar, you're not imagining it, and you're not alone. Today, we are talking about emotional neglect, not the dramatic kind, the quiet kind, the kind that hides inside normal childhoods and follows people into adulthood without being noticed. Here are 7 signs you may have grown up emotionally neglected, even if everything seemed fine. One sign is this: you struggle to ask for help, not because you're proud, not because you want control, but because somewhere along the way, asking felt uncomfortable. You learned to handle things on your own. You learned it was easier not to need much. So now, even when you're overwhelmed, you say I'm fine, and quietly carry everything yourself. Another sign: you feel emotionally tired, even when life isn't hard. There is no clear reason for the exhaustion. Nothing is obviously wrong, but you still feel drained. This tiredness doesn't come from doing too much. It comes from holding yourself together all the time. A third sign: you have trouble naming what you feel. Someone asks how you're doing. You pause. You know something is there, but you can't quite put it into words. So you say, fine, okay, just tired. Not because you're hiding, but because you genuinely don't know. Another sign: you're deeply independent, but secretly lonely. You don't rely on many people. You handle your own problems. From the outside, you look strong, but inside, there is a quiet loneliness. Not because you don't have people, but because you don't feel fully seen. A fifth sign: you minimize your own pain. When something hurts, you tell yourself it's not that bad. Others had it worse. You should be grateful. So you move on. You don't sit with your feelings. You push through. Another sign: you are highly aware of other people's moods. You sense tension instantly. You notice small changes in tone. You adjust yourself without thinking. You learn to read the room early, not because you were sensitive, but because paying attention felt safer than expressing yourself. And the last sign: you feel normal, but disconnected. Nothing is dramatically wrong, but something is missing. You go through life slightly removed, present, but not fully inside your own experiences. This doesn't come from nowhere. Emotional neglect is not about cruelty. It is about absence, about emotions not being noticed, not being explored, not being responded to. So you learn to regulate yourself early. You learn to be low maintenance. You learn to stay quiet, not because you were weak, but because you were alone with your feelings. The cost of this does not show up right away. It appears later, as emotional fatigue, as difficulty trusting closeness, as confusion about what you actually need, as a quiet loneliness that does not make sense. And the hardest part is this: people like you often do not think they are allowed to struggle because nothing terrible happened, because you survived, because you function. But survival is not the same as being supported. Nothing here needs fixing today. Nothing to force. Nothing to rush. The most important shift is noticing. Noticing that your patterns had a reason, that your independence was protective, that your numbness was intelligent. You did not fail to feel. You learned how to contain. If you have lived this way for a long time, it makes sense that you are tired. You are not broken. You adapted to what was not there. And if this video made you feel a little less alone, you can stay here. There are more conversations like this on Mind Within Mind. Slow, honest, quiet. You do not have to figure everything out today. Just being seen is enough. Before you move on, there is something important to understand. Emotional neglect does not stay in childhood. It quietly follows you into adulthood because the nervous system does not forget what it learned early. If, as a child, your emotions were rarely noticed, your mind learned something very specific. It learned that feelings are something you manage alone, So, as an adult, you do not reach outward when you struggle. You turn inward. You overthink. You self-regulate. You contain. This is why your exhaustion feels different. It is not the tiredness of doing too much. It is the tiredness of never being held emotionally. You are always the one holding yourself together, even in relationships, even with people who care about you. You listen. You support. You stay steady. But a part of you never fully rests. Because resting would require trusting that someone else can hold you. This pattern shows up in very ordinary moments that do not look serious from the outside, but slowly shape how you live. When something upsets you, your first instinct is not to ask for comfort. You tell yourself to calm down, to deal with it, to not make it a big deal. When you feel overwhelmed, you distract yourself instead of reaching out. You scroll. You stay busy. You go quiet. Not because you do not want connection, but because connection never felt reliable. When someone asks what is wrong, you shorten the story. You give the facts. You skip the feelings. You say just enough to avoid being asked more questions. Not because you were hiding, but because you were never taught that your inner world was safe to explore. So you learned to be efficient with your emotions. You feel them quietly, briefly, privately, and then you move on. Over time, this creates distance, not just from other people, but from yourself. You function, you manage, you keep going, but you rarely feel deeply met. And that absence is hard to explain because nothing dramatic caused it. It was subtle. It was quiet. It felt normal. Nothing here is about blaming anyone. Many people grew up with parents who were present in some ways and absent in others. That does not make your experience small. What you felt still mattered, even if no one helped you make sense of it. Understanding this pattern is not about fixing yourself. It is about releasing the pressure to keep holding everything alone. You are not weak for feeling tired. You are tired because you learned to be strong too early. And that strength came with a cost. If this video helped you recognize something you have carried quietly for a long time, that recognition matters. It means you are paying attention to yourself in a way you were never taught to do. You do not need to rush change. You do not need to have answers right now. Sometimes the most healing thing is simply being understood. And if you want to stay with this feeling a little longer, there are more conversations like this on Mind Within Mind. Quiet, honest, unforced. You are not broken. You adapted to what was missing, and you do not have to carry it alone anymore.